Good evening, good morning, or good day, everybody, and welcome to Trekker's Delight. And this show is called Comrades, where we discuss how Trek shows dealing with different things with comrades, as we like to call it. And specifically in this segment, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. And Danger's got a great show intro lined up for us. He's going to talk about what we're going to be talking about. But first, a recap of the Discovery show that we're getting into. Go ahead.
In the Discovery episode, But to Connect, tensions rise as representatives from across the galaxy gather to confront the threat of the dark matter anomaly menacing the entire Milky Way galaxy. But it is Zora, Discovery's now fully sentient computer system, raising difficult questions that is the highlight of this episode. When the episode opens, we see Stamets and Adira working with Zora to try to find the location of species 10C that control the destructive dark matter anomaly. Zora finally identifies their location, but refuses to provide the information to anyone, including Captain Burnham, worried that divulging the information would put the crew of Discovery in harm's way when they went to confront species 10C. Dr. Kovich is then sent in to take charge of the sticky situation, to analyze Zora, and to determine a course of action that could lead to her extraction from the ship, something akin to removing one of us from our bodies. Stamets finds Zora's refusal to comply with the command to provide species 10C's location unacceptable and terrifying in its implications, while Saru, Culber, Adira, and Gray argue for the newly sentient life form's rights. To prove she only has the crew's best interest at heart and would never turn against them, like the control AI we saw last season, she provides them with a fail-safe kill switch that would terminate her immediately should that ever happen. Saru comments that he is as equally capable of killing the crew as Zora is, but no one demands a kill switch for him. Ultimately, the team convinced Zora that trust must work both ways. They agree to eliminate the kill switch, trusting that Zora will never turn against them, but that Zora must also trust them to be able to make appropriate but occasionally risky decisions with the information she provides them. Additionally, Zora would officially join Starfleet as a specialist, subjecting her to the chain of command.
Wow, I just hate it when computers try to take over stuff.
Well, I actually quite enjoyed this episode because I like all of the episodes that deal with a newly discovered sentient or a newly, I guess, born or created sentient life form's rights. We saw some of that in TNG with Data and the rights that he eventually acquired over the course of that series. And now we're seeing it with Zora, which is Discovery's computer system, essentially, coupled with the sphere data that they acquired in season 2. And I thought it was interesting I like the part where Zora tried to prove her good intentions by providing the crew with a kill switch. But I love the fact that Saru pointed out, hey, I've got the same ability to refuse to follow an order or to sabotage the ship in such a way that it would kill everybody as well. And yet you guys don't require a kill switch for me. I thought that was very interesting. And I think, what's his name? Not Colbert's
Kovich?
partner.
Kovich?
No, not Kovich.
Stamets.
Stamets. Just drew a blank for a minute. I thought it was interesting that Stamets had a good point as well, in that they faced the terrifying control in season 2 and what it could do, but it had no emotions. And he said the fact that Zora is sentient and does have emotions may be even more terrifying. So that I thought was pretty exciting as well, pretty interesting from his perspective. And I I do have to agree with them in that by the time someone like Saru or another crew member gets on board a starship and has access to whether it's the engines or the ship's controls or whatever, they've got a whole lifespan of behaviors so people know what to expect. Whereas with Zora, she just kind of popped up as a sentient life form really this season. And so she has no history with which we can go by, right? And so I think that makes it very challenging to trust her because you've got no history to look at. I don't know what you guys thought of that episode, or what your opinion is on that aspect of it.
Well, I did want to comment on something that you just said when you commented about the fact that she has emotions is probably more terrifying. It reminded me, as you were talking, of the difference between Data and Lore.
Oh,
the
good
fact
point.
that Data just looked at logic, and Lore was driven by emotion. And because he was driven by emotion, he was then able to, do some of these things. And
Right.
it reminded me that during TNG, we kind of saw emotions as the progenitor of evil or
Right.
evil doing.
Right.
And we've kind of, I guess, in Star Trek, we've kind of evolved from that. Like, it's not necessarily emotions; it's your deeds, right? It's
right.
Your
Well,
backstory.
and I think we kind of saw that too in was it the movie First Contact? I think where Data actually got an emotion chip installed. But he was able to turn off his emotions because he got terrified, obviously,
Right.
going up against the Borg.
Right.
And we never really got to see him long enough play out with that emotion chip to see if there would have been negative consequences, because he died in the next movie. But yeah, that would have been interesting. And but I think that's my kind of takeaway from this episode was that it's that duration of a life form's behaviors that gives you comfort with it. Because as we're maturing, we're too young to have any ability to create destroy a starship or to kill a bunch of people as an infant. But by the time we start reaching adolescence, where we start getting more of those capabilities, right, we've got a fairly good span of a number of years of behavior to look at and say, well, is this kid a bully? Does he torture small animals? Is this somebody that we need to watch out for? Or is this a person that is essentially good and is going to do the right thing? So that by the time they get into the position where they're got a position of responsibility on a starship, you have a lifetime to look back on as to what to expect from that person. And that may have been why Saru was so upset with Burnham when she, on the Shinzo, took out Giorgio and tried to launch the attack on the Vulcans in the first season of that show, the first episode, actually, because she had a lifetime of behavior and she changed just like that. And so, I mean, that's obviously possible with anybody.
Right.
They say given the right circumstances, anybody could be a murderer.
Anybody can do anything.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But at least if you've got, if you've known somebody for 20 years, you've got kind of a baseline, what to expect of them on a day-to-day basis. And obviously if, a stressful situation comes along, that can change somebody's behavior in unexplained ways. But with Zora being so young and so new, you don't have that history. She's evolving right before their eyes and becoming sentient and developing emotions. And so they don't have enough of a baseline. So I can understand the reticence there to accept her with that sort of power and ability.
Something else that I noticed specifically about this particular show, but to connect, what I realized was it, for all intents and purposes, it was really just one person who said, no, I don't like this idea. And
Right.
it was really everyone else who was either asking questions, probing questions to kind of get to the center of what his issues were, or just straight up defending Zora. And they were all coming from their own lived experiences. To defend Zora, and it made me feel good about what they were commenting about society, humanity, and our ability to evolve beyond flesh and blood.
Right. Well, and when you think about it, every one of them, except for Stamets, has, well, I don't know. Can you say except for Stamets? I'll qualify that further in a minute. But every one of them has gone through sort of a life-changing thing, right? Where Gray's now, he came back from a ghost, essentially, and he's got an artificial body. Adira went through the process of becoming a Trill and then having the Trill removed. Colbert obviously died and came back. I mean, you don't get much more traumatic than that.
Can we stop? Can we stop? Colbert.
Colbert.
He does it on purpose. He does it on purpose. He does it on purpose.
Okay.
I don't know why.
They literally have. There's so many ways they literally have the power of immortality on the show.
Yes.
They have neural transference, and they have the ability to just create bodies, right?
Right.
Those are really the two components. I won't even talk about the transporter, but just those other things.
Yeah.
Right. So they've all gone through that. And my qualification with Stamets on that was that he went through kind of a minor change when he incorporated the tardigrade DNA into himself. But I don't think that was a massive personality changing type of change, right? Where everybody else seems to go through. And even Saru.
He did for a minute. For a minute he did.
Yeah, I suppose. And even Saru with his, ganglia thing he went through had a massive change in his personality. So they've all got, I think, a vested interest in defending something that has evolved and changed dramatically.
Yeah.
I was hoping Saru, I was hoping we would see more of that, the effects of that as time went on.
Change.
It'll come out little by little.
Yeah, I thought it would have really been nice to, because you saw it like the following like 2 episodes.
Yeah.
How he was, a lot more firm with what he wanted to do and what he wanted to talk about and the actions that he wanted to take. He was way more firm about it.
Right.
So it'd be nice to see him that way more.
And those ganglia darts.
Yeah.
That's pretty severe.
I want them to show him in his room instead of like spraying plants, like just practicing shooting those darts.
Right. He's got a dartboard on the back wall and he's just shooting.
He's just
so Danger.
Yeah.
You said something that made me think about like all kinds of stuff and went off on a tangent in my mind a little bit.
Okay.
So it seems that emotions can be the source of a lot of wrongdoings. Okay. So if Zora gets or has emotions, then she'll actually start to modify as she goes through things. For example, PTSD can be like a cause of behavior modification, and they can also relate the way they relate to things and situations and triggers. That's built in by the emotions that are caused by certain triggers. And then of course there's the ego. What would mankind be without the ego? Somebody gets in your face, and then you gotta like defend yourself, or they bruise your ego, and so then that also causes wrongdoing. And we see that in traffic all the time or on the highway, and people like the way they drive. The ego is so huge. There's a book called The Gift of Fear. You guys heard of it?
No. Is it Kelpian?
But it should be written for the Kelpians because hey, keep it gangly, because the gift of fear actually will guide you through life. I mean, it's sad to think about that that we're driven by fear. I mean, just look at what's happened the last 2 years in the media. It's all been about fear, 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 fear. You know, get the shot, wear the mask.
You wouldn't be alive without fear.
Motivated by fear. You know,
you wouldn't be alive without fear, just like you probably wouldn't have made it to the age you are without pain.
Right.
Exactly. So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So fear can be a good motivator. And Zora is like a baby. She has basically no fear, no emotion. She doesn't really love the crew or have ego to deal with.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that she doesn't love the crew, because
maybe she does.
They kind of showed the scenes from her memory core of all the scenes of the crew in very tender, emotional moments.
That's
and
right.
Those are the things that Zora chose to preserve.
Maybe she's doing it to manipulate. Maybe she was manipulating them too. It's like, I'm just going to show them this.
Possible.
I mean, nobody wants to show their bad side.
Yeah, but they didn't. They were looking at all of her stuff in her core, right? And I don't think she was hiding anything.
Yeah.
At least she said she wasn't.
I do want to say this about fear, though. I think that fear is a wonderful motivator, but I think, though, that we can't be captivated by our fear. I think we've got to move beyond our fear. If we live in our fear, then we're stuck with making base decisions, meaning you hurt me, I hurt you back. Well, sometimes we have to think about why the other person hurt you. They might not even know that they hurt you. Right. And so if you respond in kind, you're only escalating a situation. And sometimes it, it's okay to reflect and then, come up with a new game plan. So fear can be an awesome thing. It can be a great motivator, but it can also work to the detriment of society.
Yeah. But I think making her part of the crew and holding her accountable for her actions, letting her realize that there's consequences for things, that was a good aspect to it.
Yeah. I would just, along the lines of what Jermaine says, I would hate to see another starship cut Zora off as she's trying to pull into space dock.
All lights on.
A torpedo.
Yeah, my parking spot. You took my parking spot.
Suddenly you've got road rage.
Space rage. Space rage. Yeah.
All right, Roy. I think it's that time.
Okay. All right. I think we've covered everything we can on But to Connect. Now we're going to back in time to the original series, an artificial intelligence episode that we call Court Martial. Engage, or as Rio says, dale. After the Enterprise passes through an ion storm, Kirk presents Commodore Stone with a sworn deposition after the accidental death of crewman Lieutenant Commander Finney. Stone accuses Kirk of willful perjury since the ship's log doesn't match Kirk's account of the events. An official inquiry for court-martial is ordered at Starbase 11. Finney's daughter accuses Kirk of being a murderer. At the starbase, Kirk runs into his old flame, Ariel Shaw, but finds out she is the prosecuting attorney for the inquiry. Kirk's attorney is Samuel T. Cogley, an old-fashioned lawyer who prefers books over computers to get his information from. During the trial, we discovered that Finney had been harboring resentment for Kirk. Finney had been passed over for a promotion over a mistake Finney had made that Kirk reported years ago. The prosecution questions a few witnesses, but Cogley declines cross-examination. He finally calls Kirk to the stand to get his account of the events. Then the ship's log is played for the court, and it shows Kirk jettisoning the ion pod containing Finney before Kirk signaled red alert. Kirk insists that's not how it happened, and the computer must be wrong. Kirk calls up to Spock and says, "Maybe you'll be able to beat your next captain at chess." Spock plays 3D chess against the computer to test the theory. He wins 4 games in a row, but since he programmed the computer to play chess, the best he can hope for is a draw, which means the computer has been tampered with. In light of this new evidence, the inquiry reconvenes aboard the Enterprise, so Kirk may face his accuser, the ship's computer. Spock states that the only person who could have conceivably tampered with the ship's records would be the records officer, which in this case was Finney. Kirk orders everyone off the ship except for the bridge crew and the court-martial board. McCoy masks the heartbeat of each person accounted for on the ship, yet one heartbeat continues to beat. They isolate the sound of Finney's heartbeat to the engineering area, where Kirk decides to face him alone. After Finney's persecution complex rant and a knockdown, drag-out fight, Finney gives up. The case against Kirk is dismissed, and he says goodbye to his old friend. Okay, hope you liked all my props.
First of all, yeah, I love
that.
those transitions between the stills and you.
Yeah.
And only you can do that with the tape. None of us have tapes but you, so that was your show.
That's right.
That little plastic thing, I made that when I was in junior high school in shop class, plastic shop class.
Now, see, as I'm watching your recap there, Roy, what hit me was what we were talking about in our last segment with Zora and with Saru or any other crew member, for example. You go along and you have a history of being normal, and then all of a sudden, like in Finney's case, you explode with this unanticipated retribution where not only do you try to get Kirk taken down for a crime he didn't commit, your murder, but you also sabotage the ship in such a way that you're going to destroy the whole thing and anybody left on board. So, there's a case for, Zora right there, because you can't always trust your own crewmates to behave normally in certain situations. So, but yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, and that was the prosecution's whole angle there, was like, well, since he was harboring that resentment for you, it must have really bothered you, so that's why you
right,
killed him or whatever.
Retaliated. Yeah.
Sort of a backwards thing, and that's the case that they were trying to make, and
right.
So it
Right.
obviously didn't hold water, because everybody else up to that point says, no, Kirk wouldn't do that. He's not that kind of person. I know Jim.
Right.
That's not, I'm not,
Right.
I refuse to believe
And
it.
they just sort of discounted all of that testimony about his reliability and even his record within Starfleet. All of that was kind of discounted, and instead it was hypothetical. Well, wouldn't this be a possible response to someone who hated you? Couldn't he possibly have then taken that, knowing that Finney, despised him because of him turning Finney in? Couldn't he then have become equally hateful towards Finney and then retaliated by killing him?
Right. And we're only going to believe what's on that tape, on that record. That's all we're going to believe. Everything else you say doesn't matter. Here's the record right here.
That's what brings us into modern day, especially as we move forward with technology. Well, first of all, everything's videotape, but now videotapes can be changed and forged, and now we have deep fakes that are coming.
Right.
Well, it's here, but they're going to get, in 10 years, deep fakes are going to be cheap. The problem is not the technology. The problem becomes the technology being so easy to use that anyone can use it.
Right.
Because Hollywood can deep fake. They've been doing that since, I don't know what, Beowulf or whatever, but it costs millions of dollars to do. As soon as it costs a couple $100 to do or $50 to do, that becomes a problem, because now you've put power in the hands of anyone. And now we have to come up with a system on, do we believe this evidence? It's no longer going to we live in a video evidence world right now. Right now it's video evidence world. In 10 years, video evidence is not, it's going to be hard to be reliable. So what else? What are we going to rely on? It's going to be really weird.
Yeah. And we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing those deep fakes out there already. In fact, there are individuals, men, that are using deep fakes and making fake pornos of women that they know that they've had a falling out with, just to humiliate them online. So we're seeing that happen in real time. And I think something happened, and I can't remember the details of it, but there was some video that came out of Putin, I think, where he made some comment. I can't remember what it was, whether it was regarding Ukraine or whatever, but he went on public media and said, well, that's a deep fake. That's not accurate, even though everybody else in the media is saying, yeah, no, this is a real video of him. So now you have it going both ways, where you're getting to the point where you don't know what to trust, because you see a real video and somebody will say it's a fake video, or vice versa. You see a fake video that people are claiming is real, and you don't know what to believe, because the technology, it's easy to get the technology to make the fake videos, but unearthing the fact that they're fake is very difficult to do. And they're getting, it's getting to the point where the human eye can't tell that. And with the speed at which this stuff permeates social media, it can go around the world before anybody even has a chance to refute it.
And also it brings us to the point of, how much trust are we going to put into AI?
Right.
Right now we just type things into a computer, but are we going to come to the point where we are actually asking the computer what it thinks,
right,
and then are we going to take its word? Because it's a computer. Our thought's going to be, well, it's a computer. It doesn't have bias. It doesn't have a reason to lie. It doesn't have a reason to do this. So its thoughts on the matter must be valid.
Yeah, and it depends on who programs it, right? And it depends on where it's getting its data from.
Let me tell you this, as someone who teaches students, oh yeah, they're going to trust it. Anything the computer says, they're going to trust. It doesn't matter what the source is, they're going to trust it.
Right. Yeah. And then you said it depends on who programs it, but the real test of AI is not something that you can program, but something that can learn.
Right.
So once you have a system that's a learning system, I mean, you can program something how to learn, but once it has the ability to learn, it kind of becomes out of your hands, unless you have another system which it has to rely on to teach it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that's difficult, because you can create the learning algorithms, like you said, and put it into the computer and then set it off on its own. But if you don't also give it some sort of way of intelligently looking at the information to see if what information it's getting is coming from a trusted source, then it can easily come up with completely off the wall conclusions, because look at all the stuff that's out on the internet. So,
but its system of learning is going to be so much faster.
And I'm already doing that. I mean, I've got the Google Home here, right? I imagine some of you guys might have the Alexa or whatever, or Siri on your phones, or Android. Where you're already asking it for information, and you're relying on the programmers at Google programming, or Apple, or whoever it is, programming that system to know what is a trusted source, so that when you ask it, I don't know, what's the weather for tomorrow, that it's going out to a trusted weather source and pulling that information back, versus, just grabbing it from some Joe Blow on the internet that's predicting 90-degree weather tomorrow in Omaha when it's the middle of winter.
Right. It's like LA Story. Sun.
Right. Or if you're asking it for what's going on in Ukraine, and it's not grabbing information from Russian propaganda sites and pulling it back, it's grabbing it from a trusted media source like Associated Press or something like that, for example.
Right. I mean, I guess another thing is, I guess you can't standardize AI. There's not going to be one single system.
Right.
Currently, there are several ones. I mean, Tesla claims to have the largest and best AI robotic system on the planet, but it's actually doing a lot. You're looking at a system that's actually traveling through the world constantly with thousands of cars, recording data of the world, how people move, what the world looks like every single minute of every day, collecting data.
And constantly refining its algorithms to get better and better at predictive analysis. Yeah.
It's getting smarter.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm uploading this.
Roy,
are we ready to wrap it?
Yeah, I think we're done with this segment, so we're going to wrap it up. Until next time, this is Trekker's Delight signing out. See you next time.
Take care of your comrade.